All right. So I think I'm gonna work on my coloring sheet while I kind of spew out some thoughts. And I do have my computer in front of me just to kind of keep me on track on my talking points. So today, what I want to do is talk about some communication mistakes that I see parents that make quite frequently without realizing it. Okay. Now, one of the first things that I do, or one of the first questions that I ask when I meet a family initially, so either initial observation or with a parent interview, is asking them, how does your child communicate? How does your child express their wants and needs? Okay. Now, and I ask this for a number of reasons, and it's quite important. Oftentimes, especially with younger learners, I get parents who may describe that their child points, their child leads them to items or places, or just simply takes what they want. Okay. Now, this is often true when I go to observe. But then I sometimes get parents that will say, well, they're learning or getting more language, and they're also starting to say, I want. Okay. And this sometimes is an alarm to me that parents may not fully grasp or understand how to teach communication and to increase that communication in their child. Okay. So my name is Ms. Cora, professionally, and mama to my 2 toddlers. And yeah, today I just wanted to talk about some communication mistakes. I'm going to highlight 5. And so this isn't in any particular order. I may actually just jump around, but it is quite important, I believe, for parents to kind of be able to identify these mistakes so that they can successfully teach more language and communication to their kiddos. So number 1, well, actually first, let me go into kind of the scenario, right? So I do the interview and then I would observe. And I wouldn't say often, but a lot of the times, the observation when I'm specifically looking at communication, I may see the kiddo having challenging behaviors, falling to the ground, whining. I may see the leading and the pointing and the attempts to communicate if they want something. Parents will allow the child to lead them, which is obviously it's normal. You don't know what the child wants, so you want them to at least show you if they cannot communicate it to you. Then I often see parents, especially when they make those statements of, oh, they're getting more language, or they're using the I want phrase. That one's a big one. And that actually is the one that kind of led me to do this video describing communication. So, and a couple of things might happen with the parent saying or starting the phrase of I want. The kiddo can continue and imitate that first phrase. So the child may say, I want, may look at the mom and dad or the caregiver and not actually, complete the sentence. So they might not actually say what they want. Or they may repeat the I want and continue having behaviors. And then, you get into that kind of cycle where the parents are then still trying to figure out what they want. That leads me to the first communication mistake, which is understanding the stages of communication. So yes, we have eye contact. That is a form of communication where you might see a kiddo looking at a toy, then looking at you, then looking at the toy, or activity. Like, can I have it? Can I take it? Is it okay? And then you do have the pointing, you have the leading, reaching for an item. And typically with those behaviors, it is associated with developmental milestones, and oftentimes it is categorized under certain ages, but that's not really relevant to the conversation, especially when we're speaking about young learners that struggle with verbal communication and are limited speakers. Okay. But yeah, with that understanding that all of those are, types of communication, ways for a kiddo to communicate, just looking at an item or reaching for an item, those are ways that children communicate. And that leads me to the second one, right? Understanding what independent versus prompted or supported communication looks like. I do ask parents, when they say, like, oh, he's using the phrase, I want, I will ask, like, does he do that independently? And a lot of the times the parents will say yes, 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 you'll tell me. And I understand some prompting occurs, but what often happens is when I observe this, the parent is prompting. It's supporting a lot of the language, where the child may never actually say I want independently. Now, prompts and supporting language is a technique that's used to teach, but you have to know how to fade that out, right? And being able to understand that asking, what do you want, before your child actually says it, that's also a prompt. And what can happen is your child may end up only waiting for someone to ask them, what do you want, before actually communicating that. However, they end up communicating, right? Doesn't necessarily, again, have to be vocal. So parents make that mistake. They make that mistake often when they say, oh, you're using the phrase, I want, you're using more words. It's often prompted, okay? And that leads to the problem of not being able to fade out those prompts fast enough for the child to continue using that language that they're learning, but on their own. Okay, because ideally that's what we want. We want to increase their communication and increase skills in general to be more independent. Okay, now that leads me to number 3, teaching or prompting after challenging behaviors have occurred. So I gave you that scenario, right? The child see something that they want, they fall to the ground, or they're whining, whatever the behavior is, that kind of signals the parent to then ask them, oh, what do you want? Is it this? Is it this? All right, let's use our words. I want, and the child may say, I want ball. Okay, either they can have it or not have it, whatever. What we shouldn't be doing, especially when we're teaching communication, is waiting until the problem behavior occurs. Because essentially what we're doing is reinforcing that whole cycle of behavior. The kiddo is learning, I'm going to have to whine, cry, show my communication in the form of behavior. Then mom or dad or caregiver is then going to ask me what I want, right? And then I can either, communicate that or not, continue using my behaviors. So that's another thing, making sure that we are not reinforcing those behaviors. And I can talk about ways and techniques of how to limit that, how to fade out our prompts when we're teaching, making sure we're not reinforcing those behaviors when we're, trying to teach communication and things like that. Number 4, I believe I'm on number 4. Teaching communication is only during therapy time. Absolutely not. It's funny because by the end of my day, like I say that I have toddlers, and I label everything from the time they wake up to the time they go to sleep. Especially if you have a young learner who is using their eye contact as a form of communication. Like my kiddo, she'll look at a cup, right? And look at me, and look at the cup. She wants the cup. She wants to know what's in the cup, but I label it and I say cup, as in this is what you want. This is what it's called. So do that as often, and contrive those opportunities as often as possible. If it's a ball and they're playing with the ball and they're super excited about the ball, you should be saying ball, orange ball, big ball. You should be using as much language as possible and label everything. It's that concept of, read to your child. They'll get into reading. They'll understand, what's being read to them more. Like, read to your child as much as possible. Same concept. Label everything. I have a pen. Oh, look at mama. Mama has a pen. Oh, orange. It's an orange pen. You're teaching them what the item is. You're teaching them color. And you're associating that language with something that is already interesting to them. So always contrive those opportunities. Always, expose them to as much language and vocabulary as possible. Spontaneous language is a thing, okay? And then number 5, this might be a big one. Concentrating on the terms such as please. This is a communication barrier. Now, I can go more into depth with this, but if you have a young learner who is just now, using more language, using more words, I would eliminate the phrases I want and I would eliminate please, right? Right now, what you should be focusing on is, can that child communicate one word what they want? If they see a ball, they want the ball, but they're leading you to it. You should not require your child to then say, I want ball, please. That is you're asking them to do and to, I'm trying to put this more in layman's terms, to exhibit a lot of behaviors that they don't have in their repertoire. They don't understand what please means, right? That's just an abstract concept to them that has nothing to do with the ball, right? The I want, especially if we're prompting that all the time, is just a carrier phrase. And it might be hard to, like I said before, not prompt that anymore. They'll just always wait for you to say that. So let's get straight to it, right? Let's just say ball. And wait for your child to be able to say that independently. Every time they want a ball, they say ball, they get the ball. Then you add on 2 words, want ball, or blue ball, green ball, using more language that's functional for them, right? Then once they have that, again, the key is that they're independent in doing that, right? Once they're able to do that, then we can start putting in some more of those carrier phrases. Once they're able to independently request their wants and needs in the absence without having problem behavior, then we can start doing that. So just imagine yourself, you're learning a new language. Essentially, that's what communication is to a young learner with limited as a limited speaker. They're learning a new language. The language that they may have been using in the past are the behaviors, right? The falling to the ground, the tantrums, the yelling, the grabbing, things like that, the leading. They've used that as their form of communication. So now they need to learn essentially a new language. If I don't speak Spanish and I go to a Spanish-speaking country, and let's say I want chicken. Yes, it may be polite for me to learn the whole entire sentence, but my goal is to get the chicken. So how do I say chicken? And once I'm able to do that and I'm comfortable enough to do that, then I might say, oh, I want spicy chicken, right? So now you're expressing what kind of chicken you want. Or if you want water, right? These are basic wants and needs. This is not, you're going and you start off slow. And that's what we want you to do with your child. We want you to start off slow. This will help to decrease the behaviors because they're not as frustrated. I have to say 18 things before I'm able to get my ball. I just want the ball. And you as a parent, your goal should be, let me decrease these behaviors, increase their communication, right? So again, those are common mistakes that I see parents make without realizing it, right? It makes sense that I'm teaching my child to say, I want ball, please, and they're able to say it. But if they're only able to say it when you prompt the sentence, I want, what do they do when you're not there and they need something? So again, contrive those opportunities. I would hold off on those phrases of I want until they're independent, until they have that vocabulary, until we start to see decreasing behaviors, and then label everything. Also think about, how am I going to fade out me always having to ask, what do you want? Especially after the behaviors happen, right? And I may, in future videos, kind of cover what does it look like to fade out prompts. What does it look like to contrive those teaching opportunities? And that, again, can be across like meal times or transitions, like going outside, or even during play. Play is the best time, in my opinion, and many others, to teach communication. Yeah, so I think those are, the common five common mistakes that I see parents often have. And hopefully, if you guys have any questions or any, kind of feedback, please leave them in the comments. Like and subscribe. I do want to make and start making more videos to be relevant and very practical for families and for parents. Yeah, and hopefully we build a community where we are supporting each other and being able to, continue a lot of that progress with our kiddos. So thank you for watching. Bye-bye.